Hi, everybody, and welcome to Charger 360, the official video podcast of the University of New Haven. I'm J.W. Stewart, former ESPN and NBC sports anchor. These days, I teach sport management here at the university.
And I'm Bruce Barber, former co-host of Smith & Barber, the morning show on WPLR in New Haven, and now the general manager of 88.7 WNHU, our campus radio station.
As we wind down season 4, we're getting close to graduation. We're going to talk about that and much more today with our guest, Christine Shakespeare, who is our vice provost for policy and programs. Christine, welcome to Charger 360.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
No, we're honored to have you.
Thank you.
When you get, you get up to the assistant provost.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Big time.
Yeah, big time.
Big time.
Yes.
So, Christine, tell us where you're from, where you went to school, and what you studied.
Okay. Originally from Long Island. I'm just going to say it for you so you know how it's pronounced appropriately. And grew up there and went to Hofstra University. My dad was a professor there. And then I went to San Diego for my master's in counseling at the University of San Diego. And then many years later, after living all over the country, my doctorate at NYU.
Wow.
And I studied higher education policy. So
Probably good to have that therapy background as,
Yes,
as the vice provost.
I have to remember to be empathetic and to engage when I'm listening, and even if I might want to roll my eyes in annoyance. Yes, yeah, definitely handy.
What did your dad teach?
Interesting. He taught philosophy. He was also an administrator. He was there his entire career, 30 years. And he ran a program that was for students who didn't get admitted under regular admissions at Hofstra. It was a one-year sort of conditional admission program. It was really awesome because for some students, this was their only chance. And I think about that a lot when we're here working with students. It was their only chance to go somewhere, and it was really small, and the courses were team taught. You were required to meet with your faculty regularly, and you were basically kind of handheld through your first year because that's what you needed. You weren't allowed to pledge a fraternity or a sorority. I don't think they actually had any athletes, but long story short, it was really successful. And then after he retired and several other folks retired, they don't have the program anymore. But
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've got academia
I
in
really
your
do.
blood.
I did. I worked in his office when I was a student. And actually, it was in the days also where he would bring home like faculty. We always had parties with faculty, students, and sometimes there were even students who stayed with us for a while because they were having problems or challenges in the residence hall or at home. So our family was very involved in the lives of students.
It's such a noble profession.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's funny. I'm so lucky on campus here. I'm off at the radio station, and I work with a lot of amazing students. And now we're trying to integrate more coursework with practical activities at the radio station.
Yes.
But I'm interested. So you have this academia in your background. How
Right.
are we lucky enough to get you here at the University of New Haven?
It's a long path.
We
You wanna
got
hear the
11
whole
minutes and
story?
27 seconds, Christine.
That's exactly
Oh my
right.
gosh. Well, when I didn't work in higher education for many years, although my first job ever, because I didn't know what to do, I studied philosophy, I was in admissions. Isn't that crazy? And what's even more crazy is that Greg Eichhorn worked for the same woman that I worked for at Hofstra in admissions. That's where he learned his craft. That's where I learned what I learned. It was
Greg is the vice president of
enrollment management.
Yes.
Yes. So it's so, and he also grew up on Long Island. There's Long Islanders amongst us,
Awesome.
just saying. So that was my first job, but then I didn't work in higher ed for many years until I was at NYU. And when I was although let me just say, backstep because it's related to what I do now, I did work for a state agency in Texas. I did live there for a while. That its role was to foster volunteerism in the state. It was for the governor's office of volunteerism. And one of the areas that I was responsible for was helping garner the support of higher ed institutions in the state, in the entire state, around community service. And so we launched an organization statewide of higher ed presidents committed to community engagement in higher education. And then when I was looking for something to do at the higher ed level, at the doctoral level, my first interest was studying more around civic engagement and the original purpose of higher education, which was to foster community engagement by the young people in the emerging country at the time. So long story short, when I was studying, I was working for a professor who was doing research on comparative higher ed policies. So my first week in my doctoral program, I got to go to Mexico, and we were doing a study there about how higher education works in Mexico, and then Canada, and then in the US. And so I started there in the Office of Government and Community Relations, that's what it was called. Basically, my job was to go around the NYU community, which is the village, East Village, West Village, Central Village, even into the South Village and into Soho, and to basically try to smooth in our relationship with the local community, because NYU is growing and continues to grow, and it rankled a lot of the neighborhoods. And to talk with the local legislators, the community boards, and all of that. So so I did that for a while, and then I left and this is the story of my career. So in case you wanted to know, it's all about having met people who came back into my life. So I had gone to a school on Long Island called the Waldorf School, and there's Waldorf schools all over the world. And there was a teacher training institution in, I can't remember, Rockland County, New York. I was living in Manhattan, and they needed a dean of academic affairs, and they knew I qualified. So they called me up. Could you do this? We're about to lose our accreditation. So I went in. I worked there for 2 years. We did lose the accreditation, but we tried really hard. And then after that, another professor that I knew had recruited me to Pace University in New York City. And that I spent 10 years there. And that's really what built my career in higher ed. I was doing it was called the Continuing and Professional Education, so all the non-credit online stuff. I also did international students, and now it's like I'm doing all of this now. So I was in charge of the international students, I was in charge of study abroad, I had worked with the online education, and so I left there after 10 years. I did a little bit of corporate, wasn't really a good fit, and I landed here because I moved to Connecticut and I started looking for jobs in Connecticut. I lived in New York City for 20 years. And so finally I was like, and so I won't go into the details of how I got hired first to do a little consulting. Mm-hmm. And it was February of 2020.
Oh.
They hired me in February 2020 and a month.
Impeccable timing.
I know. And I just, my story, one of the things I have to say about being here is, it's an incredibly collegial place. I can't say that about other institutions I've been at. And I was really fortunate that Glenn McGee, at the time, he was deputy provost, he took me around to different meetings on campus. That first month I was here, I went to a Senate meeting, to an academic and student affairs committee meeting. I met different folks in Maxie, different faculty. And then when we went online, I was so grateful. I had met a lot of people and I had to start working with them online, and that's how I got here 6 years ago.
Wow.
You've done a lot in your time here, to say the least. One of, if not the most important thing on your plate is Commencement, which, as I said at the top of the program, is right around the corner, which is why we wanted to have you on the program.
Oh, thank you.
What are some of the things that you and your team are doing to ensure that Commencement, one of the best days of the year, is such a memorable experience for the students and the families?
One of the best things that we're doing, one of the most important things that we're doing.
Maybe it's the best,
Yeah,
the most
yes,
important,
yes,
everything.
Yes. I just have to comment again about what I said earlier, the incredible collegiality here. Mm-hmm. And I fell into this job again because I happened to have been the liaison at Pace to our Office of Events on behalf of the provost. And so I knew this much about Commencement. And then when Mario Gabori was interim provost, he said, Christine, you're the only one who could do this, because there was no one else. So the reason why I'm telling you this story is that I am not in charge. I work with an incredible committee, and I have a co-chair, Jen Patek, who works in the Office of Devout Philanthropy, I think that's what we call it. She does events. She's incredible. And so we have, from the minute, it was the most important thing 3 years ago was to bring Commencement to campus. And so I think what our guiding principle is, and I don't know if this directly answers your question, is this is the moment the university has to showcase itself from every little detail to how we scan tickets of the guests, to where they sit, to the places for them to park, to the signage, to the emails, and then to every graduate who walks across the stage and gets their diploma handed to them and then has their picture taken and then goes and sits down. Every single detail we know is so important because of what has been invested by these families to send one or two or many students here. And there was so much skepticism in the beginning of bringing it back here. And but I can't say enough about working with this crew of staff from around the university, all of whom have other jobs, or some whose job is related to Commencement, but yet they just pitch in and we all do it together. And so it's not just about what we do for the students and their guests, it's also what we do for ourselves. We do a survey of all the crew members, we call them, all the volunteers who aren't on this committee, who step up and show up for overtime on Saturday and Friday night. And it gives everyone a sense of pride. And so the other thing we really work for is to help create that sense of community for all of us that are there that day, for the faculty, for the staff, for all of us, because this is, and like I get verklempt because I love seeing not just how the families are reacting, but also how my colleagues are reacting.
It's an exciting
time. I hope I
time.
Kind of answered the question.
No, that's great. It's an exciting time. And it is the culmination.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, again, I'm at the radio station, so I don't, it's not a heavy lift. It's the most wonderful job. But I am so interested in everything that's going on campus and what we offer our students. I'm always very enthusiastic when we have people visiting about what the University of New Haven has to offer. And one thing that jumped out of the email at me was Charger 11. So tell us about that, because I really think it's a story worth telling, and people should know about it.
Thank you for asking about that. It's a initiative that by the fall will be 3 years in the making, and it involves the Career Development Center. I work with Matt Caparel, and what's really beautiful about it is you have Matt used to be part of student affairs, now he's not, but what you can imagine is typically you don't have the co-curricular and the curricular coming together. So we're coming together to help faculty, staff, and eventually our students, and it's already happening, articulate the competencies that they gain by being here, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom.
Wow.
And my favorite story is to say, when students study abroad, they often come back and their lives have changed. But if you were to ask them, well, how did your life change? Or if you were an employer, what did studying abroad do for you? They can't articulate it in a way that will translate to the future employer. So what we're trying to do is to make these 11 competencies, which I don't know by heart, more conscious for the students, and that by the time they finish, they can articulate them and basically demonstrate to future employers. But what I should say is that it's not just about job competencies. We call it life and career readiness. So it's also getting ready for your life with skills both for in and out of the workplace. And in the fall, we're going to have an electronic system by which students and faculty and staff can submit and track their acquisition of the 11 competencies. Wow. So stay tuned. I'd be happy to come back and show it to you.
It's so cool, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. That's what we do to help prepare our students for success in the real world, because that is the biggest thing, right? This is the buffer between high school and the real world. And in these 4 or 5 years, you need to be able to be adequately prepared, especially with your soft skills.
And and it's such a transformative time. I really like, the students sometimes they're just, it's a whirlwind, but whenever I get the chance to speak with them, I say, all right, now look around, these are going to be lifelong friends. And then the advice I like to give them, it's the advice I would give my younger self, is that when you're going through these 4 years, so important I always tell them, the cliche, and it's a cliche because it's true, try to do what you love.
Yes,
right? Okay, you hear that a lot.
Yeah.
The other part of it I've heard that I think is so important, and it relates directly to this, is what's maybe even more important is figure out what you're good at.
That's a good point.
And as you said, if you can articulate that, that is so valuable. And then with what you said, J-Dub, with the soft skills, you're going to be a valuable asset in the workforce.
Yep, that's exactly right. You called it.
Well, we're out of time. We knew things would go quickly today with Christine. Excellent job.
There's so much to talk about.
I know. Well, we'll have to have you come back on the show.
I'd love to.
Next season.
Yes, okay.
Next season when we come back for season 5. Christine, thank you for everything that you do for the university, for our students, for all the employees here. We know you got a lot on your plate, so thank you very much for everything that you do for us. We appreciate you.
I'm happy to be here.
Christine Shakespeare, our Vice Provost for Policy and Programs, and that'll wrap up this episode of Charger 360, telling the stories of the University of New Haven. If you want to be on the show, it's pretty simple. All you can do is email Bruce or myself, bbarber@newhaven.edu or jstewart@newhaven.edu. For Christine and Bruce, I'm J-Dub. Thanks for watching Charger 360, the official video podcast of the University of New Haven.